It's Thursday, October 31st, 2013, All Hallows Eve. I'm Jimmy Principe.
I'm Sydney Foster.
And I'm Trey Comstock. Put in your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 48. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy actually buys a new cell phone. Sydney is setting sail with Captain Kirk. And I am regretfully informing you that we've all been hacked by the government. But we start tonight with good news out of the government. The FAA actually made a decision.
Good news!
Is it the Dacia Sandero?
It is not the Dacia Sandero, although it is transportation related. The sanctity
clever.
of takeoff and landing for air travel is no more. The FAA has announced new guidelines that would allow the use of electronic devices from gate to gate, completely removing the requirement to power off the device during takeoff and landing, which I know we all do. Right? You turn it off, right?
I do.
All the way
You
off.
don't just turn the screen off, you actually turn it all the way off.
I do.
Because I don't.
I do.
However, as an article on TechCrunch warns, quote, this doesn't mean that you can continue playing Candy Crush. Sorry, while waiting for your massive, heavy hunk of metal to defy physics and launch itself into the air as of this very moment, end quote. Because the FAA will require each individual airline to go through a safety assessment before they can change their policy. It appears that at a minimum, the use of devices in airplane mode throughout the flight will be allowed, and most airlines should receive approval by the end of next year. So, Sydney, are you excited at the prospect of not having to bring a freaking magazine on the plane because you no longer have to power down your Kindle?
Well, buying magazines at the airport is kind of something I'm a fan of, but yes, I mean, this is especially Kindles. I mean, for heaven's sake, there's not a difference between me turning it off and having a page up that I'm reading. It's the same. So I feel like that's a long time coming, particularly for, e-ink devices. That's just ridiculous that we didn't have that before now. But I understand, it's for the flight attendants to have to say, well, you have to put away your iPad, but you can keep out your Kindle is too much. So I understand it's kind of an all or nothing thing. So yes, I'm glad that we've finally...
Not too much.
No, it is.
All those jerks with their iPads that are watching movies need to put them away.
Right.
Why?
But
I mean, okay.
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding, by the way.
I don't actually... Okay, let me rephrase this. This is good on a level because it means that I don't have to stop enjoying my book in my preferred format and switch to a different format that doesn't make sense, right? So I can keep listening to an audiobook all the way through, and so there's now at no point there's no time in the flight where I have to take my headphones off and actually interact with real humans. Fabulous.
Good news.
Good news. I can block out the world from the time I clear security to the time I meet the people on the other end. Wonderful.
No, you mean from the time you get to the internet on the other end?
Well, no.
You start to...
Just
anyways, continue. Sorry.
My headphones on. I guess I have headphones on now too. I just live my life in headphones.
You do.
Which is a sad state of my own life.
It's a sad situation.
I mean, look, this is good. This is Jon Stewart recently, and we followed this too. Jon Stewart recently did a joke that CNN is basically tries to get all of their guests to decide not like the nuances of news, but is it good or bad? This is good, not bad. The nuance here is this makes sense, but what does this say about our society? This is something that we're really excited about.
Well, it's kind of sad. It really bothers me that I can actually get Wi-Fi on planes now. Like, the fact that, I want to be able to have my Kindle or my iPad or whatever. Not my iPad, obviously. I sold that to a Nigerian prince. But
it's okay, my iPad died in a closet.
But I want to be able to have it for my own personal entertainment, but I really don't want to have Wi-Fi because when I'm traveling for business, for example, I don't want to have to be sitting there answering emails on the plane, in the most cramped space humanly imaginable.
Well, for me, this leads to the really strange problem where I'm now going to expect to be able to edit on planes.
No, Trey.
Like,
you're not allowed to. No.
But see that.
No.
But that's the problem. The problem with this is, I would think, oh well, especially because a lot of the flights I'm taking in the U.S. are so short that's like, oh, I'll barely get any work done because I can't have it during takeoff and landing. It's just a hassle. Now it's like, oh, it's basically the whole flight.
I don't think that's true for editing. Editing requires you having an actual laptop. I don't think they're going to let you use your laptop during takeoff and landing.
You say that, but
you have to. No, you have to have your tray tables stowed in an upright and locked position. They're not going to let you have a laptop.
Yeah, but
out.
I mean, it is a laptop. I can put.
They
my
don't
Pro
let you
on
keep
my
your
lap.
purse on your lap. You have to stick that under the seat in front
They
of you.
do let you keep your DSLR
doubt
in
they're
your
gonna
lap,
let
though.
you
They do let you put
a laptop out.
Well, that's going to be an interesting experiment that I'm going to try. But this is for me. Like normally, I don't do a lot of work on planes, unless it's an international flight, because then like there's just an extended period of time, and I get really bored. I have to do them fairly frequently, but. Yeah, this is terrible for me. This is good news, but this is terrible for me.
I mean,
well,
I think
you have to then exercise some self-control all on your own.
I do think it's interesting that one of the primary arguments against having these electronic devices was a distraction element. And this is basically the FAA saying, no, that was just a farce all along. We're just going to go out there and say, it was just because we thought that it would make the plane crash.
Well, and it is clearly the whole idea of distraction. If distraction were an issue, then you wouldn't be able to be. I mean, if you look around any plane that you're traveling on during the whole takeoff, prep for flight, let me show you how to buckle a seatbelt talk. Nobody is paying attention with or without electronic devices. Everybody's looking at SkyMall or reading their book.
Yeah.
So the idea that electronic devices are any more distracting than what we had already, it was clearly just
but during the process of taking off when something could go wrong, theoretically, if you're plugged into your headphones, you might not hear something you were supposed to hear or whatever. I don't know. I think it was a stretch anyways. I'm happy that this is going away. I no longer have to buy, random magazines I wouldn't otherwise read. And
I will now no longer read Car and Driver.
See, it's the only time. Well, that and going to the beach in the summer are really the only time that I go out of my way to purchase junky magazines, so it's kind of something I hold sacred. So I will probably still buy junky magazines for airplanes.
This is going to hurt at least my sales of Road and Track and Car and Driver, because those are the only times I read those were on airplanes. Maybe it'll also hurt the amount of times I read Wired magazines.
And what about SkyMall sales?
Yeah, I'm still going to read SkyMall.
Yeah. But the other problem that they're going to have is enforcing the airplane mode thing with phones, especially.
Yeah,
but they have that problem now.
I know. Yeah. Like I said, I never turn mine off.
I mean,
I put it in airplane mode.
I put it in airplane mode because, I mean, I don't
want to lose all the battery.
Well, yeah, for you especially.
I already have that problem. I don't need any help.
But I think for anyone, putting in airplane mode is actually in your best interest because your phone cannot really get a signal up there consistently, and so it's going to be constantly in like the oh my god freak out mode, and it's just going to systematically drain its battery. So put it in airplane.
You want your phone to be sitting in your pocket freaking out. That's very cruel. That is phone cruelty.
So speaking of the government causing freakouts, we've been holding off covering every NSA spying story that has come across our desk because, look, there's just been too many of them, and the signal-to-noise ratio was just getting a little much. But this one's a doozy. The short of it is, according to the latest Snowden leak to the Washington Post, the NSA and the British Government Communication Headquarters, GCHQ, have been tapping into the fiber optic cables that Google and Yahoo have been using to sync their data centers in a project called Muscular. No joke. The web giants have data centers.
An awesome project name, by the way.
This is like a Bond villain name and a Bond villain thing. So the web giants, Google and Yahoo, have data centers all around the world, and they keep data synced between them for speed of access, right? So if I need my email in Paraguay, I'm going to hit my email on the South American server, which has been synced with the US server, okay? So it's not weird that there are servers around the world with your data on it. That's actually what you want.
And redundancy.
And redundancy, right? This is how the cloud, as it gets called, works. So what the British and the US government have done is they've tapped into the flow of information passing between these data centers. They strip off the encryption, and they are able to keep a 3 to 5 day buffer of all data passing through these lines, including user email. Okay? Including user email. For hundreds of millions.
Pause and think about how much data that is. Holy crap.
It's in the estimate, it's in the hundreds of millions of individual entries per day. Like it's crazy amount.
That is a stupid amount of data.
It's a stupid amount of data, and then this undergoes NSA sorting. The NSA has released a statement saying, the NSA applies Attorney General approved processes to protect the privacy of U.S. citizens. Okay, great. Minimizing the likelihood of... The okay, great is an editorial insertion. Continuing with the statement, minimizing the likelihood of their information in our targeting, collecting, processing, exploitation, retention, and dissemination. End quote. However, since all of this is happening outside of the U.S., there is little protection by the FISA courts or Congress. It exists in a legal gray area of international law. Google and Yahoo have spoken out against this, and this is fundamentally different than the information that has come out in the other leaks. This is not a corporation or series of corporations cooperating with the government mandate. This is essentially the government hacking two of the largest cloud service providers in the world, stripping off the encryption and sorting through everybody's data, regardless of U.S. citizens or no. So, what are y'all's thoughts on this latest release? Silence is golden, shut up and get rich?
No, okay, so my thought is a couple of layers. One is I really wonder what the level of encryption between their data centers is, because if you think about it, the government has extremely powerful machines that it can leverage in order to break encryption. But to do that on this level of data every single day, it must not be that significant.
I don't know. They're breaking SSL. In the little diagram that's part of the leak, it says SSL added and removed here! ! Smiley face. They're breaking SSL.
Can you explain that, please?
SSL is basically the encryption language that gets used for internet traffic. So when there's that little trusted icon up in the corner of your banking site, when the thing's green and not red, it means you're being secured by SSL. It's HTTP, and you'll see the URL will be instead of HTTP, it'll be HTTPS. It's a form of encryption.
Which, if you look at the top of the Google Doc, it says HTTPS.
So right now, our doc is secured by SSL, but that doesn't make a darn bit of difference because apparently
the NSA
has cracked it.
Our doc.
They have broken the SSL encryption on the Google front end server, GFE. This is huge. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, so I guess it was only a matter of time until SSL got broken. In many ways, it might be better that it was the government and not some other group that broke SSL, and that we found out about it. I don't know. I don't know what to think about this. As it always comes down to with the NSA story, is you either trust your government or you don't. I trust my government. This really bothers me. But I don't know what I other than being outraged and thinking that this is really incredibly wrong. I don't know what to do.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I don't know, but for me, this crosses a line. I've been making the argument the whole time that, there are legal protections and they seem to at least somewhat follow them. You need to trust them, blah, blah, blah. And that's when they were making requests to companies. This is straight up tapping into an undersea cable and hacking.
Right.
This is what the government arrests people for.
And then recruits them.
But this isn't even This isn't... Okay, sure, the government does plenty of things, like kill people, that they arrest people for. But there are, structures and sanctions.
Yeah, but that's very different, because this is all behind closed doors, whereas killing people in most cases is out in the open for people to see.
Right, and so that's what I mean. This is them breaking their own laws without having a legal framework that makes that okay. This is, they're going into a gray area of law and skimming everybody's data. Your right to privacy is at the window.
The other interesting point is that, so this talks about specifically Google and Yahoo, but there are some other very large companies that have large systems like this that cross the Atlantic and the Pacific.
Cisco, Microsoft.
Cisco, Microsoft, the obvious ones. Apple, Amazon, Facebook. I mean, there's a lot of companies, and you have to assume that if they're tapping into one or two fiber optic lines to get this data, that they're not only getting it from Google and Yahoo. You can almost assume that the next big leak is going to be that they're also getting Facebook and Microsoft and Apple data.
Yeah, I mean, presumably. I mean, they've been feeding these things out over time because it makes for better headlines. Not
right,
to be
and it keeps people thinking about it.
No, but to me, this is one of the biggest ones I've heard.
No, and this is the one that I think deserves the largest outcry. Unfortunately, I think that this should have come at the beginning and not the end.
Well, because this is straight up government hacking.
Right. The beginning was data. Like the government is going behind your back and asking for your information
through a legal process.
Through a legal process. They're just taking it.
They're taking the USS Jimmy Carter, stationing it over an underwater cable, drilling down into that cable in something called Project Muscular. Does this not sound like the plot of a Bond film?
I think it was Thunderball.
Thunderball. And this is your government and the British government. So it's had the buffers housed with the British government and the filtering's done by the NSA. This is terrible.
In many ways.
In the CNN breakdown of good or bad, this is bad. Good or bad, Jimmy. But is this bad?
No, this is bad.
This is bad.
This is bad. This is real bad.
No, this is...
In all seriousness, does CNN actually... I don't watch CNN with any
neither
regularity.
do I. Jon Stewart's argument is pretty convincing. It's like... Michelle Bachmann's making this nuanced comment, and Wolf Blitzer interrupts her and goes, but is that bad? Or like the analyst is like the analyst they bring in are trying to make these nuanced points, and it's like no, good or bad, just good or bad. Good.
That's how the world works.
Or the best one is like, or every lead in is like, but is that a good thing, or is that a bad thing? So I don't want this show to turn into an episode of good or bad, but this isn't just bad. This is unprecedented. And this is the government doing exactly what they said they weren't doing, which is cruising Americans' data through an extra legal process. This is essentially extraordinary renditions, but instead of with prisoners, with your data. This is the data equivalent of taking a prisoner to an unmarked ship in international waters and torturing them. This is the same kind of legal thing that's happening here. You take it to a place where laws don't exist, and then you violate all laws that you would have to follow if you were in your own country. This is the NSA doing that same thing. But instead of with people's lives, which is terrible, it's with everyone's privacy, which is also terrible. I don't want to say equally terrible, but it is also terrible.
Right.
And I am tired of this. I have spent my entire adult life hearing about the U.S. government breaking the things that we say it's supposed to do. I'm just tired of it. I don't know what you do about it. I have a degree in political science and I can't tell you. I studied how to organize political revolutions. Good luck with that. But I don't know how to do it.
Well, I think that in a lot of ways, the only solution in a big way is we need a new way to do security. RSA is great. SSL is good, but we need something else.
Well, you have countries like Germany now having like a Germany-only internet. Well, great. So then the Germany-only spy networks can tap into it. Wonderful. Like, but what do you do?
Theoretically, that can be broken with this same sort of... I mean, not with a ship, right? But the Germany-only internet communicates with the real internet. But
can we honestly say that at this point there's a way to secure yourself?
No. Security through obscurity. It's the only way.
So you use the most obscure, you use the dark net. that we talked about the other week, right? You do everything.
No, you don't use Tor.
Yeah, that's, by the way, designed by the Navy. Anyways, in other things that were slightly surprising this week, Intel's doing something crazy.
So yeah, I'd say that the NSA stuff is very shocking, but more shocking to me is Intel's news.
Shocking.
Shocking. They are joining the enemy. And no, it's not the Chinese. It is
NSA.
That too.
No,
but that's a different story.
Real confused.
That's right. Intel's partner Altera announced that Intel will be producing ARM 64-bit chips beginning next year. Now, for those of you that don't know, ARM is what's in like all of your phones and tablets, except for, it's in the Surface RT, Sydney. It is what powers all mobile devices, with some very few exceptions. And beginning next year, Intel could potentially be making any number of chips for any number of manufacturers, including Qualcomm, Apple, and NVIDIA. So the Tegra 4 processor, the Snapdragon processors, and the A7 processor. This is only possible because of how ARM technology works, where ARM is willing to license the architecture for its chips, allowing any manufacturer, in this case Intel, to make ARM chips. However, you really have to ask yourself, is Intel just throwing in the towel on its whole Bay Trail mobile strategy? Or is it understanding that chip diversity is the only way forward in this mobile-dominated market?
Okay, I wonder. Because, the rumor that kind of gets floated here is, what does it look like now that Apple wouldn't have to be dependent on Samsung for printing their chips? To me, that's the big possible development here. Right now, because
Apple and Intel have a very good relationship.
Apple and Intel have a wonderful relationship. Apple tends to get the new line of processors slightly before everybody else. They're doing wonderful things with the Intel platform that a lot of Microsoft's OEMs have not been able to figure out. And Apple's in a tense relationship with Samsung. It's complicated, let's say.
That's their Facebook status.
But they've been, up until this point, they've been reliant on Samsung because Samsung was the only one that could get the kind of yields that Apple needed. Intel's going to be able to get the kind of yields that Apple needs. Because this is essentially an unbeatable processor manufacturing team now open for anyone to buy. I think it would be them throwing in the towel if there was an Intel designed ARM chip. And that's not what this is. This is Intel's manufacturing is becoming like Foxconn. They're a hired gun. And so they'll build for anybody.
Yeah, the Forbes article had some list of basically who their competitors are. And it was Samsung and, let's see, Samsung TSMC.
TSMC Semi, yeah.
UMC, IBM, or SMIC.
Yeah.
So IBM, I'd say, other than Samsung, is the other really big one in that space.
And TSMC is pretty huge too. But I mean, this means that like Intel, this like well-known processor maker who's been doing it longer than anybody, who listed there anyways, you can hire them out and they will build your chips for you. I think this is the perfect setup for folks like Apple, who are a little tired of being beholden to their main competitor to make the parts for their things. So go to the people who's all their friends. But look at Microsoft, too. And NVIDIA. I think this is very smart, and I don't think this is them giving up. Because I actually don't even think if we see Intel make an ARM chip, their own ARM chip, designed by them, I don't see that as throwing in the towel. I think it's showing that there are different devices that work for different things.
So you're on the side of chip diversity.
Sure.
So is this good or bad?
This is good. Yes. I like this game. This is good. The other story was bad. The story before that was good. I'm glad we're all following along, children.
So Sydney, what do you think about this story? Good or bad?
Fantastic.
Good, bad, and incomprehensible.
No indifferent. Good or bad?
No, I said fantastic. Next question.
Fantastic. I don't know. I think that it's
great.
It's interesting. I think the diversity, like them moving into ARM, I think this is kind of the gateway drug. I think they will design their own ARM chip after opening their factories to make them for other people.
Sure. Potentially
with Microsoft, for example, or some other. Like I think Microsoft is probably the most likely one. A large partner that has a hardware division that.
Yeah, would love
ARM
to just
help.
continue Wintel, right? So
Right,
even
exactly.
Windows on ARM runs on an Intel chip. Absolutely. But something else that could be running on these Intel-made chips is a modular phone. Your future phone could actually be upgradable.
Well,
I know.
I can upgrade my phone right now, Trey.
No, but like the physical device. You're going to throw away the Samsung Galaxy S3.
No. Recycle
Dignifiedly. But you're still getting rid of a device and replacing with a different. Project Phone Blocks has been kicking around the internet for a little bit. The idea is that instead of replacing your whole phone when something breaks or needs an upgrade, you simply swap in a new part like you would on a gaming PC, or your car, or an Apple II. This also means...
Just had to go Apple II on that.
Yeah. Someday I'll post my Woz versus Jobs lecture. It's very detailed. This also means you could better customize your phone for your needs. So, like, if you say you don't need that powerful a processor, you could dump on a bigger battery. Or if you're an avid photographer, you could dump on the photography module.
Once I'm totally behind.
Right. It has a modular design that would allow any user to undo two screws, swap out any part from the main board. And it's kind of Lego style, where it just slots right in really easy. Anyone could do it. The campaign has gained close to 1 million likes, and even I saw some non-techie friends posting about it on Facebook. However, the story got really interesting when Motorola jumped in with Project Aura, which is essentially phone blocks. They need to work on that. Phone blocks as envisioned by the Google-owned handset maker. There are no firm plans or dates, but Google claims that there will be a developer version of Project Aura out this winter for people to play with. And it works just like described in Phone Blocks. There's this kind of main board you can swap into different screens or different cameras or different processors or different whatever. So does this finally get y'all interested in this idea of modular upgradable phones? Or is it still just pie in the sky? No way. Good or bad?
It's all you, Sydney.
Well, I think it depends.
Oh, nuance.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not going to go
good
with
or bad.
It's all about... I mean, this will appeal to certain people. Some people will think that this is super cool, and look, I can customize this and I can change that. Yeah, and I know you said not. I don't know. I know you said you saw non-techie people posting about it, but I just can't imagine what non-techie people are gonna do this.
Well,
so maybe I'm just so far down the non-techie road that I don't know. I just want my phone to work. I don't need to be able to
but you say that, right? But we dropped X amount of dollars buying you a new phone when the rest of your phone was perfectly fine when the screen broke, right?
Well, you were going to buy it anyway, so...
No, but hold that constant.
That's beside the point.
That's besides the point. We had to completely replace that device when the screen broke.
Because it was cost prohibitive to replace the screen.
Right, it was at that point the same price. With this idea, we could just pop out the screen module and pop in a new screen module. So it makes your device live longer. So I actually think this appeals more across the board.
I guess so.
The upgradability, maybe not. But think about the repairability.
That's part of it. I think the other thing that'll be interesting. So I think this will be a lot like... This is the Dell of cell phones. What parts do you want in it? We can do that. Back in the old
But I don't know what parts I want in it. I want them to tell me what parts I want in it.
But what they'll do is they'll probably offer pre-assembled packages.
Well, they also don't phrase it in terms of what processor do you want. They say, do you need it to go fast? Or do you want it to have long battery life? Here's the battery module. They don't pitch it in they'll probably release tech specs too. But they talk about it in terms of what do you want to do with your phone? How do you want it to work? Here are some modules that would be good for what you want this phone to do. They're really clever in how they approach it.
Well, and you can see this fitting in very well with the Moto X strategy, because the Moto X strategy has the whole customizable colors and you can mix and match this and that, but they really didn't let you change the interior of the phone. Now, what if you had a nice shell like the Moto X? Maybe not, it's not going to be that small, but where you can say, okay, well, this is the basic Moto X, has the basic battery, basic camera, basic screen. Okay, now do you need more battery life? Do you need a better screen? Do you need a better camera? And you can see that price change as you change these things. You go, oh, even though Trey and I will sit online and spec out the most ridiculous Mac Pro possible and get up to $8,000, neither of us is ever going to buy it. But we might buy, a $1,500 MacBook Pro with Retina with some upgrades. So
I think my issue, my worry with this is even the prototypes look pretty thick.
Yeah, no, and that's going to be the problem.
Is, this is going to still, like everything that's ever been modular, this is going to lose out to the designs that can so tightly integrate what they've got that it can be super thin and super light, right? Because, laptops are getting to the point where you can't repair the tablets.
Yeah, let's go back to that MacBook Pro with Retina. So MacBook Pro with Retina is all soldered. Everything is soldered. You can't change a single thing. It's all glued. If you want to get that open, you basically need a pry bar and hope to God that you don't break the screen. Whereas even though Apple's always been the one that's locked down their devices, it used to be, and Trey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you could open up the laptop and upgrade the RAM yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that with my previous 2 MacBooks. I have had to do a hard drive transplant in one. They used to even have removable batteries.
But yeah, in order to get it down to that thin and sleek design, they had to sacrifice the modularity and the upgradability.
Right, which I think is where this is actually going to lose out, and why, as much as I like this idea,
I think it'll be a niche product. I think it'll be an interesting product. It'll be Motorola. I don't think is going to be the one that's going to keep it around. I think maybe Phone Blocks or something like that might keep it around.
I could imagine like a Phone Blocks Nexus.
But what if Motorola was to produce some of their, what you need is a standard, and then you have multiple manufacturers that make pieces.
Well, that's the idea.
That standard.
Well, and Google's Motorola standard is open. Like, other people can work on it. This is not just a Motorola proprietary thing. So the idea is they're trying to do that. But who knows how far this is going to go. It's at least something that's interesting and could be potentially, not guaranteed to be, somewhat disruptive in the cell phone space. Google might also be doing something disruptive off our coasts. What's going on with that, Sydney?
And somewhat modular.
And very modular.
Yes, we have some Google rumors for you tonight that are unlike any other Google rumors, and really most other rumors we've ever reported. So we're not talking about any potential devices or anything to do with KitKat or Android, not those kinds of rumors. What we are talking about are barges.
Are they also tapping into the undersea cables?
It's
We can neither confirm nor deny the tapping into the cables at this time.
Well, they probably are. That's probably how they're connected. But anyways, continue.
Not so sure. Isn't it their cables?
Anyway. It is their cables.
So, yes, we're talking about barges, big flat boats. This is not some kind of tech term that you don't know. So this story kind of started simmering last Friday when CNET reported that construction had begun on a barge in San Francisco Bay, and that Google possibly had something to do with it. So at first this was kind of a very fuzzy thing. But the structure that's being built on this barge is about 4 stories tall, and it was built out of shipping containers.
Like all Google servers are.
So this barge, as it turns out, has a twin that is in Portland, Maine. So we've got that. And so for me, like when I hear
turning into Independence, this is turning into Independence Day.
Exactly. When I first heard this story, that's exactly what I thought about. Is that the beginning of Independence Day, when you wake up one morning and all of a sudden there are alien spacecraft hovering over various important international landmarks.
One of them's in Maine.
But yeah.
But anyway,
San Francisco Bay, Portland, Maine. barges, tall things. And so both of these are owned by a company called By and Large LLC. And By and Large also owns a building near San Francisco Bay, which is known as Hangar 3, which makes it sound super top secret, like they might be keeping aliens there. And that's basically where the containers came from that are now on the San Francisco Bay barge.
Docked at Treasure Island.
Yes. So I recommend getting on CNET and reading this article from last Friday so you can get the very lengthy reasoning that the author went through in the process of saying why he thinks that this is Google. But basically, lots of speculation and then also just conversations with people in the area, people who had at a local restaurant who saw people come in with Hangar 3 badges who are paying with Google credit cards for lunch and that kind of thing.
Well, and the guy who's listed as the head of this shell company is a former Google employee.
Right. But anyway, we've moved past that point
call it
because...
a shell company. You don't know that.
Yeah, okay.
We've moved past that point because we did get a confirmation on Wednesday that, yes, in fact, this is a Google thing. That confirmation didn't come from Google. Google has nothing to say, has not spoken to anybody about any of this.
They're too busy running from the NSA.
So the confirmation came from the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Corporation because there appears to be, there was talk about some possible conflict with the conservation development as far as being able to move the barge to... Anyway, very strange. And so now the question basically at this point is, and has been, what the heck are these things here for? So as Trey kind of hinted at earlier, the original CNET article speculated that these might be floating data centers, which is something that Google just happens to have a patent for. From 2009 for the idea of a floating data center, and said, yes, we would take these containers and put it on a ship and do, okay, so...
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
What it looks like, but there are also rumors saying that these are not floating data centers, but in fact what we are looking at are future Google Glass stores.
What?
So floating Google Glass stores that would move from city to city. I don't know. Yeah. So, Jimmy, I'm going to toss this one to you.
Oh, no.
Which theory, if either, do you think is the more likely of the two? Or Larry and Sergey just messing with us and they're like, ooh, let's build these barges and see what people say?
Okay,
is it
so
a
I'm
thought
going to say
experiment?
that whoever came up with the Google Glass stores theory is on some serious medication. And I'd really like to know which kind so that I can get some.
Many of our colleagues, and I don't like
theory.
necessarily doing this, but many of our colleagues in the tech press were like, oh, I think that's the most plausible one. And I was sitting there going, really? Really? That's the most... They're going to build a freaking 4-story barge to sell things that are nowhere near commercially available yet?
No, look, I'm going to go with that it's more likely that each of them is a cloning center for Larry and Sergey independently rather than Google Glass
So
stores.
one of them is a Larry replicator and one of them is a Sergey replicator?
Yes, one of them is sailing away from Russia and one of them is sailing towards. Coincidence? I think not.
Well, I guess if they both keep sailing long enough, they're both sailing towards Russia. Russia is pretty big and stretches a lot.
But no, so data centers. I mean, they're data centers. They're probably going to use seawater as their cooling.
No, that's one of the things that was talked about in the patent for the
patent.
For the data
they
center.
have a patent for it. Why they're doing this, I don't know. There's probably some really good,
largely and secretive
law reasons.
Something I've also heard that would be
what happens if you spring a leak? I mean,
colleagues for whom I have more respect for have suggested, like, this is an idea that Tom Merritt threw out. This could be really useful in disasters. That you could have mobile computing power that can move into disaster zones when normal servers would be down.
This is more like a Project Loon type of thing, in addition to being.
Okay, I can see that. That's a better idea.
Yeah, look, I think it's data centers. Maybe.
But
there
I'm just
is
going
a
to go
Google.
with Titanic, okay?
There's
that whole ship thing didn't go so well for White Star Line. So
to backtrack a little bit, just the author of the CNET articles is
David Turnerman.
Daniel Turnerman.
Nice
try.
Daniel Turnerman.
And so when I'm looking at the source as far as the idea of the rumor about possibly this is a Google Glass store, he says that he got this information from someone who is, quote, well connected in Silicon Valley but asked to remain anonymous. So this is a tip that he got on after the story ran last Friday. And so
shenanigans.
This well-connected person heard from multiple sources at Google that this is some type of store.
But what's his face that founded Napster?
And there's more. And that the idea behind possibly why we have these things on a boat looking very strange made out of storage containers is that Google, again, this is quoting from the article, quote, wants to launch stores without looking like they are trying to chase Apple. So the idea that if we build things in a shipping container, it's the opposite of an Apple store, which is bright and light and open, and a shipping container is dark and
hot and miserable. You spent a lot of time in a shipping container? Because I have.
Okay, so here's what's
I've spent some time
happening.
in a shipping container with you, actually.
I have the real answer to all of this. This is Larry and Sergey are joining the prepper community.
Yeah.
And this is their doomsday bunker.
This is definitely
one for Larry, one for Sergey.
Oh.
Well,
perfect.
Well,
that aligns very nicely with my cloning theory.
Something that hopefully they won't need the Doomsday Bunker very soon, because Google announced some new products in this week's Gadget.
So I am happy to report that after weeks of leaks and rumors that Google's newest pure vanilla Android handset, the Nexus 5, has finally arrived. Trey will attest that this morning I texted him in frustration, oh my god, they just need to announce this effing thing.
Now, to be fair, you sent me that text at, let me see if I can get a timestamp here. You sent me that today, didn't you?
I sent you that today because all of the rumors were out there that it was coming, and I was just so fed up seeing all of this nonsense about this. We know it's coming. They just need to announce it.
At 11:12 a.m., Jimmy sent, Google just needs to announce the effing Nexus 5 already. This is getting ridiculous. End quote. Then, at 2:46 p.m., roughly 3.5 hours later, Jimmy texted me, should I get a white or a black Nexus 5? Now, I was at work not following the announcement, but something happened between 11:12 a.m. and 2:46 p.m.
So
Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Daylight Time.
There wasn't really a... there wasn't an announcement per se. It wasn't an event.
Well, something got announced.
They had a hands-on with reporters, and they took them all off their non-disclosure at the same time. And I think it was based on when I saw the news first. It was probably around noon Pacific is when they released it. Original rumors had been it would be 8 a.m. Pacific. Anyways, so there's really not much we didn't already know about this freaking thing. It's manufactured by LG, very much like the Nexus 4, and it's essentially a G2 motherboard with a slightly different shell. It has the same blazing fast Snapdragon 800 processor,
which is quad core.
It's quad core, 2.2 gigahertz Snapdragon 800 processor. It's a 1080p 5-inch screen. Which is 445 pixels per inch for those of you that are counting. That's 4 more pixels per inch than the Galaxy S4.
Wonderful.
I know.
It's also bigger than the Galaxy S4 somehow.
No, it's... okay, yes. Physically, it might be larger, but the screen is smaller. Same resolution. Anyways, it has an 8-megapixel rear-facing camera with optical image stabilization, LTE, which the Nexus 4 did not have, and
which
wireless...
is the most ridiculous. Anyways.
Yeah, no, okay. And wireless charging, and it comes in both black and white. All this and more for an unlocked price of $350 or $150 on contract. That's for a 16 gigabyte model.
Wow.
Sprint, AT&T, and T-Mobile should have the phone sometime in November, but orders for the unlocked version went live today, as Trey told you, and I bought one.
As you told me.
Yes, and
then I reported. I have secondhand knowledge.
So at the time of recording, all versions are listed as shipping in either 2 to 3 weeks, which is the 32 gig white version, or 3 to 4 weeks. Earlier, they were just the 16 gig black was just listed as currently unavailable. So that was interesting. So Trey, is this phone already a runaway success? And what does this really tell us about this ridiculous inflated prices of the phones in the market?
I do think this is a good phone. In the good or bad structure that has been the theme of this episode.
Wait. We need to go back. Barges, good or bad?
Awesome.
Awesome. Great.
Awesome. So we're mostly good this show.
Mostly good. Mostly good this show.
Good with barges.
Which for once for us is pretty good. I think this is a good, in the good or bad distinction. I think this is a good phone. I think this, I think this is a good phone. This solves my problem with the Nexus 4, which was the lack of LTE. This feels like an actual premium product that you don't have to pay a premium price for. Now, my point about that price is I think this price is artificially reduced. It has its own form of subsidy. It's not a carrier subsidy, it's a Google subsidy. Because LG is not having to cover marketing, and LG is not having to cover the operating system. And Google has an incentive to keep this phone as low priced as possible because they are trying to break the carrier model of buying phones in the first place. So it is within their interest to make an unlocked phone as cheap as possible. And Google can eat it a little bit.
Now, I'm sure they're not actually losing money on it. I doubt they're actually losing money on the hardware.
On hardware, maybe.
No,
but
I doubt it.
They're not in the interest. They're not in the business like Amazon. They're not actually in the business of making money off of hardware. I gotta believe this is close to cost. If you look at a cost tear, if you look at a cost teardown of an iPhone 5S, it was like $250, $300.
Yeah, no. So I bet that this is close, but I'm sure they're still like the Wii. I'm sure they're still making money on it. Like,
but okay, the Wii is the only example of any of those that are making any monny. Sony and Microsoft are taking a bath on those things.
Yeah, but they're not. Okay, but Google's not locking you down to the same extent.
No.
They're
locking you down to
Amazon
Android
books. You can buy Amazon movies. You can buy Amazon things. Like Google doesn't stop you from doing that.
I can buy Ubisoft games, and I can buy EA games, and I can buy non-Microsoft or Sony software. I think this is exactly the same thing. And they may or may not be taking a bath on it, but they're pretty close to losing money on the hardware because that's not the point.
I think that I think that they're making money, but barely. Sydney, what do you think about this phone? I mean, you just got a shiny new phone. If this phone had been available, would you have even thought about it?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know. I'm not familiar with Android at all. If I were to switch, I'm a person who, in case people haven't figured it out yet, I get comfortable in one thing and I don't like to change. So if I were to make a switch from iOS, I would probably want to move to Windows Phone just because that operating system is more familiar because I've got it on this, I've got something similar on the Surface. So I couldn't see me making this change, but that's just me and my old lady not wanting to change things ways. So
is this phone good or bad?
Well, the real question on this one is not good or bad, but Jimmy, did you order black or white?
So I'll be honest, I was sitting there on the edge when I could get a white one shipping tomorrow. I almost ordered it, but I got a black one.
Good choice.
Supposed to ship November the 8th.
So we should have it for hands-on.
$400. We should have it right around the same time that the PS4 comes out.
God, that week, man.
Now that is assuming, and this is something I have not yet decided. And listeners, you're welcome to write me and tell me your thoughts. I'm looking at you, Jeff. You've already told me kind of your thoughts. Whether or not I should stick with the unlocked version for $400 or get the locked version on Sprint, which is my carrier, for $200.
My argument is get unlocked because that price for what it is amazing. You could get a comparable iPhone on contract for only $100 less than that.
Right, and it gives me the opportunity to jump off of Sprint and take that phone with me because it is the single phone is supported by Sprint, T-Mobile, and AT&T.
Also,
so I can actually take it anywhere.
Hey, Jimmy, do you have any international travel in your future?
Yes, I believe I'm going to España.
Hey, Jimmy, would you like to just be able to swap in a Spanish SIM?
Yes.
You know what an unlocked version can do that your locked down one to Sprint can't do?
You say that. I'm not sure that's actually true.
It is true. It's one of the features of unlocked. Is you can just drop in a new SIM.
Well, but yeah, you can have Sprint internationally unlock your phone for you. You just have to ask for it.
Right, but this is all seamless.
Right, and it won't have the stupid Sprint logo on the back.
Right.
For $200 not to have the Sprint logo. Right.
Well, totally. That's not the only thing you get, but sure, that is a feature that you get.
Well, the other thing is, and this is actually my honest concern, if the Nexus 4, even though it was fundamentally broken by the fact that it didn't have LTE, it still had trouble staying in stock. Like, they didn't keep that thing consistently in stock until like March of this year, about 5 months after they announced it. So I don't want to wait till March to get my freaking phone.
And carrier support with the Nexus devices have always been slow because it's not really what Google wants to do.
Right.
So
the carrier still does actually control when you get your update. Like the Galaxy Nexus on Verizon, for example, had this huge problem with Google couldn't push the update. And it's also very important to note that Verizon is not getting this phone, at least not right off the bat.
Couldn't imagine why.
Its band is not supported, even though it has the CDMA for Sprint. So that's an interesting point.
Because it's running the Qualcomm chip, so presumably it's running,
the
Qualcomm radios.
It's running the same chip that the S2 is, or the G2 is running, and it's running a slightly more upgraded version of the same chip that's in the HTC One and the Galaxy S4. So there's no technical reason why this won't work.
So we may have finally found the holy grail of Android phones, at least from my perspective.
I actually finally bought one. That's the indication.
So I've been talking a lot about the holy grail of fitness tracking devices. That is specifically one that with a heart rate monitor built in on the wrist, so that it actually collects real data and not just jiggles around a bunch and collects junk. Which is, by the way, the essential principle behind the Fitbit. It's wonderful. That's
the principle behind the Fuel Band.
Fuel Band and all of them. Like it's junk data. It does kind of give you an into am I being active or not, but that's really to the extent that it can really measure. Right. Until now, the Aero is to me the holy grail of this. The Aero is a wristband with a built-in spectrometer, not a pedometer, a spectrometer. They claim. Okay, so basically, a spectrometer analyzes light spectrum of things, right? And so, by measuring light spectrum, it can, for instance, track your heart rate by visibly looking at the visual changes in blood vessels. They're also claiming it can do something crazier than that it can analyze the food you eat based on. Now, it's not like injecting anything into you. There's no needles. Using the spectrometer sitting on the surface of your skin, it can look at the caloric content, the sugar content, the protein content, the cholesterol content of your food and help you track that. So as you're eating, it will track calories for you and fat and sugar automatically, as well as being able to actually track your stress and exertion and exercise and sleep through your heart rate, not through are you holding still or are you moving or are you waving your arm about. Okay?
Which is a specific motion.
Which is a specific motion, but you get my point. Now, this is interesting. Like, I'm excited about this product. No one's had hands-on with it. This is still totally theoretical. It will not be released until next year. Fall 2014 is what they're shooting for. You can pre-order it now for $150, which is for what if it actually does what it claims to do. Pay it. $150.
That's what the Fuel Band costs. So even if
Right.
it does half of what it claims to do, it's still better than a Fuel Band.
Look,
And it doesn't measure things in fuel, which I still think is the stupidest metric ever invented.
and then the target price for the actual fully released version is $200 if you don't pre-order.
Which is in line with the Basis Band.
Which is in line with the Basis Band. Now, there's a couple downsides. A, this thing is currently not a watch. Yeah, okay.
Damn it!
Yeah,
I thought we
know.
already went down this road with
We
the
did.
Fitbits.
We did.
It needs to be a watch.
It needs to be a stupid watch, people. If you're going to make me pay $200 for a thing, I will gladly pay that price for this if it was a watch.
Because it's not a pedometer, you can wear it on your dominant wrist, which is the problem with the Fitbit. You have to wear it on your non-dominant wrist.
I was actually thinking of wearing it on my ankle.
Because you're just so fly like that.
Because I'm pretty fly for a white guy. Na, na, na.
So, Sydney,
Okay.
what do you think? I mean,
Well,
could you see this in your life?
it all sounds very theoretical, but I feel like a heart rate monitor at least should be very achievable, and that alone will make a huge difference in it actually being able to accurately calculate your calories burned and that type of thing. So that I'm pretty excited about.
Do you know what my biggest concern about this thing is?
What?
Battery life.
Yeah,
that is an
they're
interesting
not
question.
talking about it.
Well, and if you look at there's a little video. It'll be in the show notes. In the article on Engadget, and it looks really thin, and it looks impressively thin. But you have to really wonder about what the battery life of this prototype that they're basically showing off is.
Yeah,
And why, if they have this prototype all done, why it's going to take another year for them to release the thing?
because I think they're hoping for some battery advancement. Look, the science technically works.
Yeah, explain to me how the spectrometer can measure your calories, because that sounds like smoke and mirrors.
I don't fully understand the science behind that, but this is not the first time I've heard of something doing this. And it is based on measuring the spectrum of the light spectrum of individual chemicals in your blood, right? And so when you hear about in any science-based crime show, right, they talk about a GC mass spec. Well, that's a mass spectrometer. And so that's doing something similar, where it's passing light through a thing and looking at the light bands and in that way identifying chemicals.
But it's important to note that a mass spectrometer costs something like $200,000.
Well, right, but that also needs to be a heck of a lot more accurate and needs to be able to analyze any chemicals, and this only needs to look at a very few, right? Protein, fat, sugar, and
They'll
then
also sell a lot more of them.
and they'll also sell a lot more of them. So, I mean, this is fundamentally doing something different, but based on the same scientific principles. So, like, the science doesn't sound crazy, and this is actually similar to how Basis was measuring heart rate anyways.
No, that's true.
So, like, the science, people have been questioning the science.
Well, the heart rate, I believe. I don't have a problem.
But the heart,
with
the heart
It's-
rate's actually the thing I give a crap about, because
yeah,
it's no longer
it's this
junk.
calories thing that seems like
the tracking the
weird.
calories. Maybe that's true. I have no idea. I have Weight Watchers for that, and that works fine for me.
It could be a reach. Like, it could be one of those, like how Fitbit says they can track calories.
Right.
This
Yeah.
might be the equivalent reach.
But this can actually track the calories you are burning during the day.
Mm-hmm.
It can actually do that, unlike the rest of these, which kind of make a claim at that. And for me, that's what makes this potentially the Holy Grail, especially if they make it into a watch. A watch.
Hint, hint, nudge,
hint.
nudge.
Small display with the time. Like, I don't need much here, folks.
Strap a pebble to it.
Speaking of Holy Grails, we're going to replay our new segment called Jars. Just another review segment.
I feel like I should be stomping on things or
I have a
something.
jar.
This is
I
brilliant.
see your jar. For the audio listeners, Jimmy is holding up a mason jar.
Jimmy was prepared.
I am prepared.
So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second iteration of our newest segment, which, as Trey said, is called Jars. And for those of you who missed our first Jars segment, it was on episode 45 when we
I think
had...
I missed our first
You
jar.
did,
segment.
Jimmy. We had our lovely guest host, Stephen Doss, our gaming correspondent.
He has more hair than I do.
A lot more hair.
Yeah, he has a lot of hair in general. But so if you missed it, and Jimmy, I hope you have gone back and listened to it because it's worth listening to. It was quite a fun time. But for those of you who missed the first segment, as Trey said, JARS stands for Just Another Review segment. So basically, JARS we use as our opportunity to delve into the land of video games, and specifically more to get into the games we're playing now and have kind of more of a casual discussion of what we're up to. So this week we are talking Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which we've been waiting for quite a while, and yes, pirates, so we're excited. So that launched on Tuesday for PlayStation 3, Wii U, and Xbox 360. It will be coming to next-gen consoles, but not until after those consoles launch themselves. And it's coming to PC, I believe, around the same time.
You say that. I already bought Killzone 4 for the PS4.
Yeah, so... Go figure. So this latest installation in the Assassin's Creed franchise follows the adventures of pirate Edward Kenway as he both swashes and also buckles his way through the 18th century Caribbean. So at this point, I do need to defer to my co-hosts who have actually played the game. I've watched just a little bit of Trey playing, but I have not had a chance to play yet myself. So without too many spoilers, can we get highlights and lowlights?
Hey, Jimmy, good or bad? Good or bad?
Good.
Reduce it down to good or bad.
I think it's good. I know that Trey is much further into it than I am, so I'm going to take the first stab at it here. Stab, assassin.
With your wrist blades.
2 swords.
So one of the things that I always enjoy about Assassin's Creed is the fact that, right before this, I started playing the original Assassin's Creed again, and it amazes me how little the controls have changed. They got rid of one really stupid mechanic.
They've made the combat easier.
They made the combat easier. I don't actually like the little pop-up combat thing.
Well, it's more kind of... No, it's more like Batman Arkham City, where it's like there's some rhythm to it, so you swing up to block and then stab, 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 stab.
No, no, that's true. But I don't like that they give you what button you're supposed to... Like, okay, counterattack, hit O. I'm like, no, don't go away.
The counter isn't O. Counter is B.
See, and playing Assassin's Creed has totally messed me up.
PS3.
Playing Zelda Wind Waker, I keep wanting to hit the button that's in the right location to swing my sword, and instead Link whips out his telescope, which is so much less useful. Like, beat them over the head with the telescope. Great, Link, thanks.
So really, I mean, I think the key story here is how does it compare to Assassin's Creed 3, which was universally disappointing. So how, Jimmy, in your experience with the game, how does it compare to AC3?
It doesn't mess around. Like, the problem with AC3 is you spend so much time in the early part of that game just going like, oh, come on, can we just move past this? This is horrible. Mm-hmm. Because in AC3, I'm going to totally spoiler AC3. It's
out
for
a year old. The statute of limitations is 12 months. You have 12 months to play a game, and then we can spoil it.
And so
these are the rules.
AC4 is out, so we are going to spoil it for you. Everybody died. No, okay. That's
fairly accurate.
But anyway, so you go through this whole Connor growing up, and Connor's kind of whiny, which is not endear him to the gamer.
He's also very serious.
He's very serious. He's less Ezio kind of had the good natured, and
he's a lovable rogue, and I think Edward Kenway is much more of a
Kenway is definitely trying to capture that same. And so I think that it's very well done as far as what I've played. It keeps those things that I love about Assassin's Creed. I've just been exploring Havana, which is the first city you come to, and I've just been sitting there the whole time exploring Havana, killing things, chasing people down.
Stab.
I still don't like the fact that so original Assassin's Creed, if you had the jump on a guy, you could outrun him. He would never catch you. But starting with Revelations, Assassin's Creed Revelations, they added guys that are faster than you.
Yeah, but in the original Assassin's Creed, you were just constantly running because it didn't matter how many guys you killed, they just kept popping back up again.
I think this has that same mechanic where it just keeps filling in guys to kill them. Which makes it fun when you run into like an enemy camp and then just start slaughtering everybody.
I think for me, the big improvement in this game over AC3 is they solved their pacing problem, right? So AC3, there was this huge wind-up and huge backstory, and it was like 5 hours before you were really in an open-world game at all. Here, within less than an hour, you are in an open-world game.
It took me about half an hour to get to the open world.
You don't have all of your abilities yet, but you can still do that fundamental, like, I wander around, I choose what I'm doing, which you didn't have in AC3 until Connor grew up, was born, had his parents die, his mother died.
There was a little bit of openness in the woods, but it wasn't openness in a city where you could do all the fun city things like see how far I can run without hitting the ground.
Right.
Well, and besides, you're a little kid. There's not that much that you can do.
Like, it has solved the pacing problem. The graphics on current gen, I was talking last week how I was disappointed with next gen graphics. It's not good.
Well, I think it'll be interesting because I have it pre-ordered for the PS4, and so comparing, because Trey will be there when I play it. I think comparing it graphically, Xbox 360 and PS3 to the PS4 will be interesting.
Yeah.
Because we'll get a really good feel for whether or not they're actually leveraging a little bit better graphics.
So make sure to join us on at 1 a.m. Central on November 15th for the beginning of our 6-hour PS4 live stream. Jimmy and I will be together. We'll do a live unboxing of the PS4, and then we'll be playing Assassin's Creed 4, Knack, Killzone, and probably some other random stuff too.
Yeah,
the other random
Pokemon
Yellow.
Oh yes. Oh, there might be some video of me just playing this thing. Which was the original Game Boy for those of you on the audio.
Extensive day one patch that we're going to have to download.
It's going to take hours.
It's going to take a while. So it should be interesting. But I think this is a much better game. I mean, it has a Metacritic on Xbox 360 of 86. On PS3, it has Metacritic of 89. What I didn't look up. Here I am fact-checking a podcast again.
Trey, what have we told you about that?
Fact-checking ruins podcast.
Oh, look, GameSpot looks like Giant Bomb now.
Yeah, well, that happens. Games. I can't spell assassins, and that's a problem.
I was just going to scroll down to... It's got to be down here somewhere.
So I want to know if there's an assassin turkey in this one.
So far, no. But
okay. No, one of the things I find most interesting about it, because I finally got to the point where they pull you out and they show you the world outside, and it's kind of weird. But anyways, they fixed the whole... So they made this thing, with the original Assassin's Creed of the Animus is the reason why you have this HUD and you do all these things, and it's the Animus that allows you to do this. Well, but then what happens when you're not in the Animus? Well, then you have absolutely no context for anything, and it's infuriating because Assassin's Creed 3 had a lot of outside of the Animus missions.
Where you run around as Desmond Miles and the Power Rangers.
And you just be lost, like, the whole time because you have no idea where you're going. And so, and you have people talking in your ear telling you, oh, you need to go here, but that's not nearly as useful as, like, a map. So they added this little communicator.
It's a tablet. You have an iPad.
It's a tablet. Actually, looks much more Amazon Kindle Fire HDX.
Kind of. But my issue with that is it's now first person. And I haven't beaten the game, so I don't...
That's true. It is first person.
I don't know where this is going to go. But if it turns into the first person sections in Assassin's Creed Revelation, I handed those over to Sydney because I couldn't do them because they made me want to vomit. I didn't do them. And so,
one thing I'm curious about...
For instance, I didn't know What's-Her-Face was a Templar until long after she was dead, and it was a foregone conclusion.
That didn't happen in...
You were told that in some of the DLC for Assassin's Creed Revelation.
In the first person.
But no, you found out in the first person section that she was a Templar.
Not in anything that I had.
Right, in the DLC that we didn't get. But it was still a first person section where you found that out. But by the way, What's-Her-Face was a Templar.
What's-Her-Face is a Templar. I figured that out without the DLC. I didn't need the DLC. I think so. it's important to note I've played like an hour and a half of Assassin's Creed.
I've played like
before.
4 or 5 hours.
And probably of that hour and a half, 45 minutes of it was just running around Havana. So that gives you an idea of how far I've progressed. I haven't actually done anything after the first 45 minutes where they make me do things. And I think in my brief period of not being in the Animus, I think they're setting us up for you are actually still Desmond.
Well,
and
I don't want to spoil it. But it is not as if Desmond never happened.
No. They're very honest about that. It's not spoiling. It's at the beginning of the game. I don't care. Play the game. You'll figure this out in the first 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It says that you're playing through the memories of Desmond Miles.
So, yeah. I mean, if you're... This is the age-old game reviewer trope. Like, fans of the series will love this entry. But I think this is fundamentally a better entry than the previous one.
Even fans, people that like this style of game, that's what it is.
Should play the previous ones first.
You should play the previous ones first. But even if you wanted to just jump in, you're going to miss a lot of backstory for the other shit, but it'll be fun. Yeah, I know.
So, speaking of fantastical captains, it brings us to this week's Last Call.
So while people may debate and do debate who has been the best Starfleet captain in the many Star Trek series, we won't get into that right now. It could go on forever. There is
Picard.
It's definitely Picard.
Janeway. Let's not.
That's
Janeway.
True. I just spent a lot more time with Picard.
This is where the problems arise.
Patrick Stewart.
I will give you between those two. Anyway, like I said, we're not getting into it.
I'm into it.
There is very little room to argue that James Tiberius Kirk was the original, and I realized there's no room because yes, there was a pilot that came before Kirk. I understand.
And there's also
please Trekkies don't hang me out to dry for this.
Hercules on the prequel.
Yeah, that so doesn't count. Anyway,
disappointed Hercules.
Disappointed.
Still, I still, when you think of classic original Star Trek, James T. Kirk is there. And then when one thinks of James T. Kirk, of course, immediately you get images of shat-tastic acting, some well-delivered lines there, strategically ripped uniforms.
Were you and I watching the same Star Trek?
Rocket Man.
And then
I'm not the man I was before.
Yes, and of course, professional womanizing, a very important service provided by James T. Kirk.
Mr. Tambourine Man!
And that, too. So all of these things, this image that comes to mind when you hear the name James Kirk, really probably made life rather rough for the star of today's Last Call, the captain of the Navy's newest stealth destroyer, Captain
James Kirk.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Navy's new flagship, the new super stealth, high tech, never before done thing is captained by a man named James Kirk.
Oh, what could possibly go wrong? Please tell me someone's wearing a red shirt on that ship.
Anyways, continue, Sydney.
Yeah, so his middle name is not Tiberius. It's sad to say. It starts with an A.
Disappointed.
We don't know.
Disappointed!
He never had an opportunity to command the USS Enterprise.
Which is a thing.
We still have that.
Well, it's retired, I believe.
No, it's
but it hasn't been
60 years old.
It hasn't been. It's retired, but has not been stricken from the registry, so it could get still called up.
Yeah, but if they put him, anyway.
Is this retired?
Unlikely. But still, James Kirk, Captain Kirk, is at the helm of the most advanced ship in the fleet.
This is a fact that we're not making this garbage up,
which is pretty. And the ship itself is quite awesome. So its name is an odd one. USS Zumwalt. Don't know who that is or what that was.
Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
He was an admiral.
So the ship itself is no slouch. It's actually also equally as interesting as James Kirk. It has the with carbon fiber superstructure, angles that deflect radar, and advanced computers and automation within the ship that allow it to run with a smaller complement of sailors than most Navy destroyers, so like half the sailors that you would have on other ships. So very high tech, very cool. Obviously, we don't get a whole huge amount of detail because this is,
So it's the
defense.
Lamborghini of naval vessels.
It's awesome. Yeah,
It's carbon fiber and has angles.
It's
designed to boldly go where no ship has gone before. and by the way,
It was inactivated in December 2012, which is not the same as retired.
whatever.
No, it is. It is listed as retired.
Ha!
Enterprise is a commissioned Navy ship, but inactive, which means it has been retired but not stricken from the registry. Which is what I said.
You mean to tell me that giant ship is just sitting somewhere?
Correct.
That's terrifying. Anyways, sorry, I'm totally naval geeking out. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically the only question that we're left with here is where are they going to find a naval officer named Spock to help out Captain Kirk and make sure things aboard the Zoom won't stay logical?
Now, it gets even crazier than that, because I believe this ship has no windows and is controlled only through view screens. I'm also not making this up.
With a high-tech computer.
With a high-tech unified... It gets worse. A high-tech unified computer structure. So there's essentially one computer core that controls the ship.
Submarine.
Yes, it's like a submarine. For instance, they see something, and the Captain Kirk will, for instance, have to say, "Put that on screen," instead of "Look out the window."
Are there women in incredibly short skirts?
It can be arranged. And on that note, it is time to end. Thank you for joining us on this Google and government themed edition of Text Last Call. If you want to email us in and tell us whether it was good or bad, email us.
And you can leave a voicemail too. Just email us a voice recording of good or bad,
and we'll gladly play it on the show. Just good or bad or anything.
Please give us your name and then good or bad.
Good or bad. So you can email that to podcast@textlastcall.com. Send it to us on Facebook, facebook.com/textlastcall, pinterest.com/textlastcall, or @textlastcall on the Twitters. However you find us, you'll be seeing us on the interwebs. Disappointed on screen. I wonder if he has to because it has reactors, so the reactors could overheat.
Stay away from
when they do landings.
Now, is there a battle bridge that's below the thing, and so the top bridge ejects off?
Sir, we're in Klingon space. Who are the Klingons? That's my question.
Engage.